Okay, we are officially recording right now. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankarya Sharya Madhyamam Asmadasharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vishvaro Guratmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Yomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurti Namaha Sava Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Atiguru Pranatoshmaham Om Shanti 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 Om. So last class we began the three stages of the experience cover the waking state. So if we have a lot of noise in our background, remember to switch off the mic, okay? So we covered the waking state in our last class. And I remember today I want to share with you so we're gonna, are you seeing the chart here? Okay, is the chart appearing? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So we are analyzing, now for those of you or those who are going to watch this video later on, we are doing Tattva Bodha. We are going through all the most important topics or notions or teachings of Vedanta. And we began analyzing the three states, the three states of experience, the three mental states of the jiva, the three levels of human consciousness, which is the one of the awaker during the waking state, the one of the dreamer during the night. We go from waking into dream, into sleep, and then dream. So we have the awaker entity, we have a dreamer entity, and we have another entity that we don't have, some of us have a difficult time to relate to, but there is an entity there called the sleeper. So, and I forgot to bring in this poster, this chart. This is Ramji's chart. And today we're going to look a little bit into that. We covered the waking state last time, okay, which is represented in this chart by this entity here. We see we have consciousness, all pervasive consciousness all over, and it pervades the universe and pervades the three states of human experience, human reflected consciousness. So we have the all-pervasive consciousness pervading everything, including, of course, the three bodies, the three states, the five koshas, and so on. So in the case of the waking state, we have a situation in which consciousness identifies with the body, the physical body, and becomes extrovert towards the environment, okay? All the sense instruments and the sense organs. So in order for one to be awaker, we need the association of consciousness with the three bodies. In other words, we need the subtle body to be anchored in a physical body. So in the physical body, we have the instruments of perception, the instruments of action, the physical instruments of perception, and the five instruments of action. So in the subtle body, the awaker, it is the subtle body in association with the physical body. In the subtle body, we have the five organs of perception and the 5 organs of action. So we say that the awaker is that entity that is really hungry to consume. And what it likes to consume, it's addicted to certain food. And what it likes to consume is called experience. So it wants to experience. So therefore, we say that the awaker is like an entity with several mouths. In some of our charts, they are going to represent 17. Some others they are going to present 17. Some others 21. Depends on how we want to elaborate it. So here we have only 13. Ramji said to keep it simple, I'm going to show only some ways that we consume experience 24/7. We consume experience through the 5 instruments or 5 sense organs, the 5 action organs of actions. So we have these 10 mouths, the 5 organs of experience of perception, the 5 organs of action, and then we have the intellect, we have the mind, and we have the ego. Okay. So we are constantly contacting our environment and gaining experience/knowledge through these doors, through these pramanas. Pramanas means vehicles of experience and knowledge. So through these mouths, these avenues, I gain knowledge. I gain knowledge through my eyes, I gain knowledge through my nose, through my tongue, through my skin, and so on. So we gain knowledge, we gain experience, we experience the field, either receiving the stimuli from the field or responding to the stimuli into the field. We receive the stimuli and we respond. It's a constant, dynamic response, stimuli and response between these 5 perceptual organs, plus the mind, plus the intellect, plus the ego, and then we keep respond through the intellect, mind, and the ego using our organs of action. So this is the situation of the awakening entity. Okay? There are some symbols that says that we are like a rat. A rat is a good symbol because a rat is extremely rajasic, like these tourists that have invaded the small town of Mark. So we have these rajasic people, and a rat is a very rajasic people. It wants to consume experience all the time. It's all the time looking for some action, something to gain, something to experience, something to do. Okay, so we say that human being, and driven by this extroverted, ignorant nature as a samsari, it is like a rat. It's consuming experience 24/7. Okay, compulsively, all the time, doing, feeling, experience, responding, and so on. So that's what most of us do for as long as we can maintain a certain level of rajas. And then, like Mark was saying, after once you really maintain rajas for a long period of time, a certain period of time, it starts converting itself into tamas. And then when we convert ourselves, our energy, rajasic energy converts into tamas, naturally we become a little bit more sleepy, and then we're going to see what happens, because the awaker stops being awaker to become a different sort of experiencing entity. Okay, it does not becomes, it goes out of existence, and then another entity appears, which in that case is the sleeper or the dreamer. And we're going to look more into that as we go, covering this other state of experience. The dream state. What's the dream state? It's the state of experience when the gross body is not present. So it's a very clear statement. So when we when we go into the dream world, we don't take our physical body with us. Okay? So the physical body is out of work, it's out of business. Okay? Does not have a job in that state. It's the state of experience when the gross body is not present, it's not needed. And the sense organs are perceiving external, and the sense organs are not perceiving external objects. So the sense organ requiring the physical body, it perceives the external objects. So since the physical body is not present in the dream state, we don't have the 5 instruments of perception. So we don't have the body with the 5 instruments of perception. We don't have the means to perceive the external world, and moreover, the external world disappears from us. So we don't have the field, and we don't have the body with the perceptive instruments to experience and know. So when we go into this sleeping, in this dream state, we don't have the body, okay? But we have the perceiving, the sense organs, the perceptive organs, not the physical instruments. We have the organs of perception, which belong to the subtle body. Remember, the subtle body we have covered before, the 3 bodies in its details. The subtle body is composed by the intellect, the mind, the ego, and then it's all the 5 organs of perception, the 5 organs of actions, plus all the 5 physiological, all of that belongs to the subtle body, okay? So the subtle body, it becomes alive, it shines in the dream world, okay? In fact, the dreamer has a very nice name which relates to this ability of the subtle body to shine on its own during that state of consciousness. So the organs, the sense organs are not perceiving external objects. So there is no field, there is nothing to perceive. But the impressions left on the causal body, our body of vasanas. So during the day, we act through the physical body, the 5 instruments of perception, the 5 instruments of actions, we interact, and we gain experience, we gain knowledge, we accumulate impressions, okay? I mean, regardless of this knowledge being right knowledge or wrong knowledge, doesn't matter, but we are gaining, we come to some conclusions, and we are taking a lot of this experience / knowledge. So this is what happened in the awakened state. But in the sleep state, we don't have the body, we don't have the field. So what we are left with in order to create this beautiful world called the dream world, we are left with the impressions from all the interactions we previously had in the awakening state, with the field, with the Dharma field. So we only have that. We have our previous experience that left impressions, subtle memories, okay, tendencies, propensities, and so on in our causal body. And this causal body is going to, somehow it's going to vibrate, because when it's really settled, it produces what we call the deep sleep, the dreamless sleep. But somehow, some of those vasanas start awakening. They remain suppressed for a certain period of time, and then we have a bit of sleep, and then those vasanas, they come alive, and then they start projecting those impressions into a screen of consciousness, which is the dream world. You know? So all these previous experiences in the awake stage are subjectively projected into the subtle body, creating the dreamer and the dream world. So that's a very interesting statement. It creates the dreamer which is the vehicle, the body by which we can experience our own projection, our own dream world. Okay? So these vasanas, they are going, this content, the content of my vasanas, which is something that is totally personal, is totally subjective to the person. There is nothing really objective about them. It's my subjective mind, vasanas, tendencies, subtle impressions that project themselves. And they project first the dreamer and then the dream world, okay, or both at once, howsoever we want to look at it, okay? When the self seems to identify with this experience as a dreamer in the subtle body, this self identified with the subtle body in that state is called dreamer or taijasa. Taijasa has a very, very significant meaning, that name. Taijasa means the shining one, the shining one. And if we remember the picture, our chart here, you see the dream world. So we have all our organs of perception, organs of actions, plus the ego, mind, and intellect. They are not extrovert to the field because there is no body and there is no vehicle to bring our consciousness to the external world. But it somehow, it becomes fascinating. It turns into see the content of one's causal body shining as the dream world. So this shining of those vasanas, the content, the impressions, those tendencies, you know, it's what makes the dream world and makes the dreamer known as taijasa, the shining one, the one that shines on its own and projects its own dream reality. Okay? Of course, we need a special means, we need a special vehicle to enter in this world. So the vehicle is the means by which you experience the dream. So we need the dreamer to come into place as the dream comes before us. So without the dreamer, without the dreaming body, which is a subtle body, it's a very, very subtle body, okay? So without the dreaming body, which has a different frequency, it's altogether a different constitution, we cannot experience that world. So this entity is called taijasa, the one that shines on its own. Of course, nothing shines on its own. Everything shines by the grace of consciousness alone, as we know. But it shines on its own in the sense that it does not need Ishvara and Maya's projection to experience and know it has its own source, and it somehow it has the power, that it has certain Maya power, inner Maya power to project its own world, private, personal world of experience. The awaker, the Vishwana, does not exist in the dream state because neither the body nor the perceptions of the external world are present. In the dream state, only the subtle body and the causal body are on, are active, okay? So only the subtle body, the causal body in association with the subtle body are active. The physical body is absolutely off. It's absent. Okay? We don't need that body. We are entering into another field of existence, another field of experience. This field, we don't need a gross body. We need the subtle body. The gross body remains asleep, and the shining subtle body, the physical body remains off at sleep, and the subtle body, it experiences and knows its own projections. The causal body projects thoughts on mental, emotional, past impressions into the mind. It does so based on the collection of previous experience in the awakening state, creating the purely subject dream experience. So what it tells us that this experience we have in the middle of the night, when we really have these dreams, and we have somebody killing somebody else, somebody stealing, somebody doing adamic actions, anything, we need to keep in mind that it's all me. It's all me. It has nothing to do with anybody else. It's all about us. It's my own creation. I'm creating this out of my mind. It's nothing to do with anybody else. If we want to reanalyze dreams, we need to come from the standpoint of saying, this is all me. Nothing comes from anybody else. It's all about me. It's my mind with its contents, the bad, the good, and the ugly, as we say. Similar to the way we think the awakening state is real, when we are awake, we also think that the dream state is real. Similar to the way we think the awakening state is real, when we awake, we also think that the dream state is real. We also think that the dream state is real while we are dreaming. So when we are dreaming, we have no way to question the reality of the dream. Have you ever tried? We can only question the reality of the dream from the perspective of the waker, but the awaker is not in the dream. In the dream, we only have this entity called the dreamer. The dreamer has no means to question the reality of that experience. It's completely sold into an experience that it has project itself. In fact, it's not projected by the dream, it's projected by one's vasanas, the causal body. So it's totally bought into the reality of this movie, of this projection. We have no doubt that it seems so real. It is ever changing. Just like that, so the dreamer cannot, I'm sorry, I jumped one paragraph here. By the way, which one is more or less real? So I put another note here. Which one is more real or less real? I think that Vidya brought this question last time. So what makes the waking state appear as a little bit more real than the dream world? The dream world appears to be unreal, but it appears to be unreal from the standpoint of the waker, only by the standpoint of the waker. Now, the awakened state appears to be real from the standpoint of the waker, the same way the dream world appears to be real from the standpoint of the dreamer. But when the Vishwa, the waker, understands the true nature of reality, the true nature of the self, the non-dual self, and then from the standpoint of pure self-knowledge, it understands that the awakening state is also as unreal as the dream state. But you need to stand as consciousness, in consciousness, in a way that you can see that the awakening state is a projection of my good friend Maya, and then the dream is the projection of my good friend, the causal body and the jiva and so on. Okay, and I stand as consciousness, the only reality. So both these worlds, the dreaming world and the waking world, they are not real. They are not real first from the standpoint of the jiva, as the awaker, the dream state is not, the dream world is not real. And then from the standpoint of self-knowledge or consciousness, even the awakened state, both states are not really real. They are just appearance in the screen of consciousness. Consciousness, I, the only I. So when we take the dream state, in this case, the I, the self, to be the self is mistaken to be the dreamer. Just like the awakened state, the dreamer of the dream state cannot be you, because it is ever changing, not always present, and known to you as an object. So here we have another logic. Just like the awakened state, the dreamer of the dream state cannot be you. Why? The awaker, you know that the awaker is always changing, and the field, Jagata, the field, the Dharma field is always changing as well. So in the dream state, we have, likewise, we have the dreamer changing. Sometimes the dreamer is having a beautiful, sweet dream, and it's really enjoying himself. It feels like, wow, this is one of the most celestial experience I ever had in my life. I don't want this dream ever end. One of those dreams when they interrupt, we say, oh no, please come back, dream. No, but it's not possible. So the dreamer changes from one moment to another. The dream itself changes. Okay? So it's ever changing. It's not always present. It's bound by time. And moreover, the dreamer and the dream is known by us. So we know that the dream is there, and there was an entity that was running so hard. Have you had this dream of there is some real big problem happening, a huge, and you are running, and you have this gravity working against you, and something is about catching you, getting you. So we know, we see the poor Taijasa, the dreamer, we see the dream, we see the line. So we know that this poor dreamer and the dream is changing from a moment to moment. It's not always present. It has a beginning and an end. And moreover, it's an object known to me, the dream world and the dreamer. Therefore, I consciousness cannot be this object, dream and dreamer. And moreover, consciousness cannot be the subject and object at the same time, because we know for sure, this is the most fundamental principles of Vedanta, is that in Mithya there are two factors in operation all the time. It's the subject and the object is anything other than the subject conscious principle. So consciousness or the subject cannot be the objects and consciousness. So if the dreamer and the dream is an object appearing to me, it means it cannot be I, pure, limitless, akarta, never acting, nirvikara, never changing, never modifying consciousness. But leaving that aside, consider this. If you were previously the awaker, so we covered the awaker last class. We know how it is to be awaker during our waking hours. So we know previous I was the awaker. How could you now be the dreamer? What happened to the awaker? Where did the awaker go? So did the awaker, poof, disappeared? And then the dreamer appeared? So the awaker and the dreamer, they just come into It appears to come and appears to go again and again. Okay, they don't really change or turn into anything else. They just appear and disappear like everything in Mithya. Even if this is the case, even if the dreamer would become, the waker would become the dreamer, even if that would be the case, neither one can be you, because you are the self-conscious self, that which does not change, in that which does not appear and disappear. The dreamer appears, and then the waker disappears. And then later on, the dreamer disappears and the sleeper appears. We're going to look into that later on. And then the sleeper appears, and then the dreamer appears. And then the dreamer disappears, the waker appears. So where is the self in there? If the self is that which is Satyan, the only reality there is, that which is always ever present, never changing or modifying from a moment to moment, never modifying to experience. So none of those two entities can be me, because they are bound by time, they change. I'm that which does not appear and disappear. The proof for that is that you are aware of the coming and going of both the waker and the dreamer. So in the morning when we are there in bed, and then there is this slight dream like that, and then you are the dreamer, and in the morning, usually, at least with me, I have these slight dreams before the waker shows up. So we know that there is a light that is illuminating the dreamer and its morning hours of dream. And then and it's in the morning, it's interesting, because sometimes if I want to stay a little bit longer, I have short naps. I shift into a waker, and then again I become a dreamer. This kind of light dreams, and then I waker and then dream, and then comes a morning. I say, no, this dreamer, this awaker, it's a pain in the butt, He's stubborn. Now he is here, and he is here to stay. I'm going to have to put up with this awaker for another 15 or 18 hours. Because now he came, and he thinks to be the guy, the king of the three states. So we see those entities appear and disappear, coming and going. So the proof is that you are aware of the coming and going of both the waker and the dreamer. You have to be present before the waker shows up. That's simple logic. We need to be present before the dreamer shows up. So we are present during the waker, transacting with the field, going to bed, beginning to feel a little bit dizzy at sleep, and then we just see the dreamer later on, we see the deep sleeper later on. So we have to be present through those three states. We need to be present before the waker shows up in order to say, oh, here it comes, the waker. And then you have to still be present to say, oh, the waker disappears, and here it comes the dreamer again. The dream and the waker are superimpositions on you. They are known to you. So we know those two entities. They come, they modify, they convert themselves, so they disappear and appear again. They are bound by time. They keep changing. If you actually are the waker, this is a very nice logic here. If you actually are the waker, you would disappear when the dreamer showed up. And you would not be able to say that the dreamer was there and vice versa. So in other words, if you would be the waker, if you are really the waker, we would not be able to experience and know the dream world, because the waker is not present when the dream and the dream and the dreamer appears. Okay. So if we were the waker, as we say now, the waking state is more solid, it's more consistent, it's more substantial, it's more real. I am the waker. I reject the dreamer. I reject the sleeper. The sleeper, I think there is nobody home. There is no experience entity. We're going to look into that later on. But as a waker, if I was really the waker, I would disappear when the dreamer showed up. And I would not be able to say that the dreamer was there. So, how can I be the waker if I disappear when the dream comes and I'm no longer there, because I cannot exist as the waker and the dream simultaneously? So, it makes no sense to believe that I am the waker because I disappear. I would not be there. If I would be the waker, I would not be able to experience the dream state. As the waker cannot experience the dream world. If I was the waker, there would be no experience of the dream world, because the waker is never present during the dream. So then, witness and know that the wake world becomes. Now, who then witness and know that the awake world becomes the dream world? The awake world disappears, and then a dream world disappears. One is Maya's projection, and then the dream world is the projection out of our vasanas. So who witness? So the obvious conclusion is that you are there before, during, and after the waker and the dreamer. And we are this consciousness that reveals, we shine into the waker, we shine into the dreamer, and we reveal the world of the awakened world, and we reveal the dream world. So we are this conscious that reveals both these states of experience, both of these different states of reality or levels of realities. Okay? Commentaries? Contributions? Complaints?
Just quickly. So, but I think as you said last week, obviously the waking state, I think it's more or less that you look outside the window, it's like the same, and although things change, they sort of change at a much slower pace. So it's about sort of destroying the reality of the world and all the objects in it. So I think that's sort of is that in Panchadasi, isn't it? I think.
I'm sorry, I did not really quite understand your point. Can you repeat?
Well, no, it was that in the waking state, the objects outside of us have that consistency.
Yeah.
So this state sort of seems more real, but it's about maybe destroying the reality of the physical objects that present themselves, that they're inert, that they don't have any inherent value or meaning, isn't it? But
Yeah.
to negate them, then we sort of just see it as they just appear.
Yeah, last week, I think, last time I mentioned something that the waking states and the field, the Dharma field with, with the field with all the possibilities for us to work out our karmas is the field on which we can gain experience, knowledge, and grow, and get free. So we cannot really benefit much from this projection of the dream state. This projection, as I think I mentioned something about that last time. It's just we are recycling the impressions from our previous experience in the awakened states. There we have our experience. Some of them are pleasurable, some of them are painful. We get some knowledge, we get some ignorance, we believe in the knowledge, we get confused, we get clear. So we go through all this experience during the awakening, and that's the field in which we can progress, we can grow. Yeah? And this material, physical Dharma field is created by it's a projection of Maya, but under the predominance or dominance of tamas. The physical material universe is consciousness reflected in an aspect of Maya, which is predominant with tamas. So we have this Dharma field, physical material world, environment in which we interact, which is constituted by dense matter because of its predominance with tamas. There is so much tamas. Tamas grossifies energy that it vibrates in a certain way that it grossifies, and then we have physical material universe. So we need a stable field in order to work our karma. Whereas in the dream state, there is no stability. There is a subtle universe. It's the predominance there is Rajas and Sattva. Okay, so that universe does not have enough tamas to produce this, this stable field in which we can really work and grow, learn and grow. So what is the good of those dreaming states? It's it may have some health factor, in the sense that when we dream, we sometimes release some energies that are important to be released. Just to give you a nice example, a nice story. On my days during Osho Rajneesh, when I moved to Pune in 1987, I was dying to get to Pune after those years in the community and so on. I went back to Brazil, and it was terrible to go back in the world and so on. And then in my first possible opportunity, I went back to Germany. I started working, and it was very difficult. I had to maintain my ex-wife with my child in Brazil and work in a restaurant in Germany, and save some money for one day to go to Pune. So when I finally got to Pune, it was an energetic shock. Also because in Germany, in Hamburg, I was drinking a little bit too much champagne and having too many parties. Okay, so when I went to Pune, I entered that field, like Osho used to call the Buddha field. So I entered that atmosphere that was very sattvic, especially compared to where I was at, the ambient I was coming from. And then within a few weeks of being there, I was already living my life. I was enjoying. I said, wow, this is paradise. Thousands of people here, from all over the world, and having darshan with Osho every day, and satsangs, and working in my kitchen, because I always worked in the kitchens, producing food. I went to bed in the night, and I had a girlfriend with me, I was dating someone. This girl came with me. I went to my room. I have a small room somewhere nearby the ashram. In the middle of the night, I, I did not wake up, but my body woke up and started screaming, yelling, and going like crazy all over the room. And I was hitting my head against all the walls and yelling, screaming so badly. Okay, to the point it was a large house with a lot of other devotees of Osho Rajneesh living in that house. People came all down, and my room was had a outside entry. It was a small room that had an outside entry. So they all came and they started really trying to knock down the door to see what was happening because it looked like I was being killed. Okay? And it took me quite a while until I was coming back to my awakening state. Okay? And then after a few seconds, 30 seconds or 47 or 1 minute, I say, no, 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 I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I was dreaming, but it was not a dream. It was an energetic release, or we can call it a dream, just to make the story short. I was in a desert and I was being tortured to death by 3 men. So I relived the experience of being tortured to death. So as a result, my physical body became so ill that it took me more than a month to be able to go back to my kitchen to do my work. I had to do acupuncture, massage, and shiatsu. I was all stiff for 1 month because the shock of living that experience again overnight, which was just something, vasana from previous life, previous birth, that was suppressed. It was deep sleeping in my conscious mind. Somehow, because of this shock with this environment in Pune, this Buddha field, this sattvic field of energy, that vasana came alive and it shined itself in projecting this experience that was really, really painful. Now I know what it is to be tortured to death. And I paid the price. You wouldn't believe the situation of the poor girl that I was dating. I took this there. When I came back to my sense, the girl was in one corner of the room like that, terrified of fear, And she was saying, "Oh my God, I'm dating a madman, a maniac, What is this man?" So we may say some psychologists say that dream is important because we keep releasing certain energy. So we could say that, we just throwing up. I think the other day I mentioned that it's a kind of throwing up. We're just projecting things that we are too full with. I don't know if it is around your point.
And when we do, if we practice things like meditation and with our eyes shut, and then our mind starts sort of wandering, and sometimes you go off in a bit of a daydream. What's that? Is that sort of just a bit of an in between, from waking to dreaming? Sort of thing?
Well, this is a subtle question. I mean, they often call it the twilight zone. You are just people think that is a different state, but it's not. To my experience, it's not really a state on its own. It's just that we keep going between the awaker and the sleeper, awaker and sleeper, in between the two. You understand? So we keep moving across those two worlds. A little bit awakening and then again falling asleep. So that's how I understand this twilight zone, or this. Some people call it lucid dreams. Okay. So it's lucid because it's a light dream, and it's right at the border between the two states, and the awaker is right by the side there, being able to register and observe some of them. I mean, I experienced that in the morning. I have this experience of napping, and the waker and sleeper, they are just side by side, and then it's easier to see the dream and to understand those projections a little bit. That's how that's my take for it. Okay, let's go and look into the deep sleep state. So what is the deep sleep state? It's the state when the body, the gross body and the subtle body are not present. Wow, how can I have an experience without my two bodies, my main, most important two bodies? Okay, so in the sleep state, I had to renounce my physical body. And now to go into the deep sleep state, I have to renounce my physical body and my subtle body. Okay? So it's a state when all these two bodies, both these bodies are not present. And then what is there? What is the vehicle by which I can experience this state or this world called deep sleep? Yeah? It is the causal body. Only the causal body remains. Since there is no subtle body available to facilitate thought or perception, then all objects, including time and space, are absent. So there is no subtle body with its conscious mind, Jiva's conscious mind. There is none of that to facilitate thought and experience and knowledge. Okay? So the space and time and all objects we usually find in space and time are all absent. There is no perception, there is no experience, there is no knowledge, but we need to revise this understanding, this deduction, this conclusion, because the scriptures tell, and they are going to prove to us that there is a certain experience there. There is a certain entity experience, that object of experience. But what object of experience if we have just determined that there are no objects, including time and space? What kind of object is that? Which is not in time and space, which is not really a tangible object. So in simple words, the absence of tangible object is by itself an object. The absence of tangible objects is by itself an object against the screen of consciousness. Okay? So last week I came to the class, I stayed for 15 minutes, and then I say, there is nothing happening today here. Can we say that? There is nothing happening today here. There is nothing happening in the conference call. No, there is nothing happening is a wrong statement. The right statement is there is nobody in the conference call except I. There is nobody. Is an experience of the conference call is empty of other bodies. There is only I, myself, and the absence of other bodies. No? So since there is no subtle body available to facilitate thought or perception and knowledge, then all objects, including time and space, are absent. It is the subtle body, the reflector of consciousness, that makes the Jiva mind self-conscious. So I don't know if this is a common teaching or common knowledge or common notion for most of us here today in this class, but the subtle body is a reflector of consciousness. We have two levels of what we call reflecting apparatus. We have Maya, that reflects the Ishvara, reflects the Jiva, it reflects the world. These are all reflections on different aspects of Maya. Maya is the macrocosmic apparatus reflecting medium. And then we have all the Jivas, these sentient objects, these conscious objects that reflect consciousness as well. So we say that the subtle body is this reflector of consciousness, which makes the jiva and the mind self-conscious or sentient. So sentient is consciousness reflecting the causal body, and then it produces the jiva, which is aware of its environment and aware of itself. It's self-conscious. Therefore, when there is no reflection, there is no duality. In the causal body, we don't have the reflecting medium. That's what we are trying to say here. We say that in the causal body, in the deep sleep states, the subtle and the physical body are not on, they are not present, they are suppressed. We have only the causal body. The causal body does not reflect because it's constituted by a lot of tamas in association with sattva. Of course, there is always a combination of the three energies, but the subtle body is where there is a lot of sattva, so consciousness is reflected. Consciousness is reflected as a jiva in the subtle body, but the subtle body being absent in the deep sleep, it has no medium to reflect consciousness, to produce self-consciousness. Therefore, there is no world of objects, there is no plurality of objects, there are no duality, there is nothing going on. There is nothing going on, and yet we love it, don't we? We totally love it. So in this state, which we love so much, we know there is no problems, and we are totally at peace. Hence, upon waking, we say, oh, I remember that I did not perceive anything. I had nothing. I have nothing, no desire, no expectation, no preference. Nothing would bother me because I had nothing that I really want. I was lacking nothing, desiring nothing. I had nothing to avoid. There was no fear, nothing to reject. There was nothing. There is just something because I know that I love it. I cannot love something unless I experience and appreciate something. The fact that we love it is a proof that there is an experiencing entity experiencing this state of total blankness, absence of duality, plurality. There is nothing which reflects on the reflecting medium. Therefore, I am full, whole, and complete, one without a second. There is this experience of limitlessness, sense of limitlessness, because there is only I, myself. We can call it ocean, indifferentiate ocean of tamas, or we can call it awareness itself appearing as the deep sleeper, which is called prana, the prana jiva. So we know the scripture says there is an experience entity and it gives it a name, prana, the prana jiva. And what it experienced, and experience the fullness of no differentiation, the fullness of no limits, no others, one without a second. There is nothing reflect, there is nothing appearing. We can either look at it as something very close to consciousness itself, experience its fullness, or this medium called the prana experience the absence, the total absence of both worlds, the world of thought, feelings, and emotions, and the world of physical material objects. I remember that I did not perceive anything. I had no problem, nothing to gain, nothing to avoid. I experienced this peace and this sense of limitlessness. When the self appears or seems to identify with the deep sleeper, with the causal body identified with this third body now, when it's identified with this very, 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 very subtle body, we call them causal body because it's what it calls the subtle and the gross body. When the self appears as if identified with the causal body, it's called the sleeper or the prana jiva. The discussion The discussion of deep sleep is very, very subtle. It's very tricky and subtle. When we go into Maya, when we go into the causal body, this whole discussion becomes more subtle and it becomes very philosophical as well. But there is always an element of experience, of analysis of experience that can prove the statements of the Upanishad. But it's tricky, it's subtle. The discussion of deep sleep is tricky because almost everyone thinks that they are not existing in deep sleep. It's a common notion. Most people believe that, no, I don't exist in deep sleep. Why? No, because there was nothing happening. How can I exist without anything happening? How can I exist? Of course you exist. If we would not exist during the sleep, or deep sleep, dreamless sleep, you think we would exist after the dreamless sleep? No. Existence is always ever existing. Existence is not on and off, on and off, on and off. And moreover, if existence would desert us during that state, the body would never come into the awakened state. It would sleep until it would rotten, okay, and be disposed, would go cold, the body, if it would be deserted by consciousness itself, by existence itself. So before we go into any fast logical or philosophical arguments that prove that you exist in deep sleep, ask yourself these questions. Do I fear that? A lot of people in Vedanta like to say, no, I don't fear that. But most people in the world say, no, I don't fear that, but I love life so badly that I don't want to die. I want to live forever. I would sign an agreement with Ishwara if he would provide me with eternal life. Yeah, a lot of people think that way. I want to live forever. So do I fear that? So the probably for most of us is, yeah, I don't fear, but I don't really appreciate that. I want to live forever. So even if we don't fear death, we don't want it to come. We can, if death comes, you say, please, one more day, one more year. You always think of those terms. 1 more year, 2 more years. I know some people who have been facing that, and then they always say, no, it's okay. I made peace with it, but I would like to live another year. I have a terminal condition, and so, but 1 more year. And then if the person gains that, by the grace of Ishwara, gains another year, and then when it comes the time, I say, no, I'm okay with that, but I would like to have another month. And then we keep pushing because we want to avoid it. We love, we appreciate. Consciousness somehow projects all these jivas, and there is a building system which is this love to be, love to exist, that makes us like, no, I want to exist, I want to experience, I don't want to run out of existence. The proof that you exist during the sleep is that You are sitting here right now in this class of Vedanta, no? And you are not really trying, quoting your own debt. That is not welcome, and we love that.
Arlindo?
Yeah.
I missed what you just said. We are not what, our death?
We are not floating or floating. How you say that? Floating or
Approaching.
floating. Floating. Yeah. So we are looking into the existence or non-existence in deep sleep, okay? Why do we fear death, and or why we hope that it stays away from us for as long as possible? We don't even like to think about that. I want to live and I don't want to bring that into the picture, because that is the non-existence of the body mind. The body mind, this construct, this phenomenon, is what we call the jiva, the person we believe that we are. So we think that we are the person, and we believe that death brings about the non-existence of the person. Okay? So if you truly do not exist in sleep, then it's essentially the same as death. They don't call it the cousin of death for nothing. So this is there is a saying in our culture, Vedic culture, that calls the deep sleep as the cousin of death. Have you heard about that? Has anybody heard about that? Me neither. Have you heard about that, Carla?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they call it the cousin of death. So if the bottom line here, since your non-existence is not desirable, as evidenced by your aversion to death, then why would you willingly seek deep sleep each and every night without any fear in your heart? So we are drawing a parallel between the state of deep sleep and the state of departure of the subtle body from the physical body, because death is nothing but the mind departs from the physical gross body. So the mind goes into a state, and some people think that the mind is sleeping, but it's not really sleeping. They think the body is sleeping, but some cultures decide to burn the body, to cremate the body, and then the body is not going to sleep. Now, but if we put the body and we bury it, and we say, no, it's sleeping there. Okay. We are not afraid to go to bed and have our several hours of deep sleep, because somehow we know, we trust that in the morning we're going to come up again, existing as the awaker. So the awaker appearing in the morning and the awaker before going to bed to sleep, okay? So we have the awaker before, the awaker afterwards. It cannot be an indication that in between the awaker disappears and the awaker comes back, you do not exist for the reasons that I just anticipated before. If we don't exist from that period of time, we would not love to go to sleep, because inside, deep inside, we know, oh, I go to deep sleep and I have no fear of death. And death, I hate death because death is associated to non-existence. But I love deep sleep because I know that exists, and I exist with great joy and great peace, and I want it. So I go to deep sleeping knowing that I exist all through, because I cannot love and appreciate something unless I'm there to experience and enjoy it. The experience is there, otherwise we will never appreciate, we will never desire it. So if you truly do not exist in sleep, then it's essentially the same as death. They don't call it the cause of death. Since your non-existence is not desirable, as evidenced by your aversion to death, then why would you really seek the sleep each and every night and without any fear in your heart? Because we know that we exist through it. So that this argument kills it. We never wish something unless there is an experience of great joy. And there is no experience unless there is a conscious entity living through that experience, collecting that experience, gaining that experience, existing through that experience. The answer is because you do know that you do exist in deep sleep, because we don't analyze our experience carefully. But when Vedanta reveals this knowledge to us, which is nothing but an analysis of our unexamined experience of day-to-day experience of life. So when we look at that, and then we have to accept the fact that I do exist over the deep sleep, and I experience the peace and the quietness and the rest and the love and the fullness, limitlessness of non-duality. So now we're going to try to understand who is this prana, who is this entity. If you did not exist, you would not wish a good night of deep sleep every night. You're never going to wish yourself a good night of deep sleep every night. And furthermore, you would not wake up feeling rested, because a non-existent entity cannot be changed by a non-existent experience. So if I don't exist during the night, I would never wake up feeling rested, because a non-existent entity cannot be changed by a non-existent experience. So in the morning we feel rested. There was an entity that exists that goes to the experience of deep sleep, therefore it feels rested. Okay, it comes up as a waker, rested, and the waker knows by inference that it was existing all through as the deep sleeper, the prana. Therefore, it would never assert that I feel nicely rest and revigorate and rejuvenate and so on. So only an existing entity can be changed and rejuvenate overnight to become the refreshed awaker. So not only you do exist in sleep, but you also experience it. And we will discuss it a little bit more details shortly. But let's go back to the existence issue, because we are all afraid of non-existence. But we have no problem with our apparent non-existence during the deep sleep. The main reason for the people think they do not exist in deep sleep is the absence of the body, the absence of the mind, the absence of the objects in the world, the physical material and the mental world, the world of the dreams and the physical material world of physical objects projected by Maya Shwara. None of that is present. Okay? So the people think that they do not exist because there is nothing appearing to me. You might say, I cannot recall anything. I don't remember anything. There was nothing going on. Since nothing was there, and then we mistakenly, we conclude if there is nothing there, it means to say, I was not there. You see how those bias that we have, we assume, we conclude that there was nothing going on, it means to say, I'm not there. I was not there because I couldn't capture any tangible experience. This line of reasoning is understandable, but it's flawed, inherently flawed. It implies that your existence depends on the presence of objects. It would depend. It's flawed because it implies to say that, yeah, if there are no objects and then I run out of existence, so I need objects to existence, and there goes a big problem. I'm all the time hooked up and addicted to objects of experience because deep hidden in my mind, I developed the notion that I depend on objects for my own existence, and that is the most absurd statement that goes against the most fundamental statements of the Upanishads. We are the only independent principle, and we lend conscious existence or existence to inert objects and conscious existence to the sentient object. And everything shines because I shine. I'm the only independent principle. I do not need any object, and all objects of the universe needs and depends on me. So, but when we say that I don't exist during deep sleep because there was no object there, this reasoning goes absolutely against the fundamental statements and fundamental declarations of the Upanishads and the nature of reality.
You're taking yourself to be the body, mind, not conscious.
Exactly. You identified with the body, you identified with the subtle body, the physical body, and now we are trying to look to understand that we did not get to the point that that fundamentally, I mean, all of that is driving us to the conclusion that there is something that is all the time present through the three states, and we know already what it is. Okay, our true, fundamental, free, independent nature, where we want to take into account the poor taijasa, the poor pranya, because the pranya is an entity. It's a means of experience and knowledge. Okay? It's a vehicle by which we experience this state, state of mind, state of consciousness, this deep sleep or states of samadhi and so on. The nirvikalpa samadhi in that case. So if this line of thought to say that I don't exist because I depend on objects for my existence, if that was true, it would apply equally to the awakened state as well. Now, if in deep sleep I say, no, I cannot exist because there are no objects, and then it applies the same to the dream state and the awakened state as well. I depend on object for my existence, okay? In the dream state, the dreamer is born out of the dreaming objects. In the awakened states, the awaker is born out of the solid physical material object. But does the presence of objects in the awake states make you exist? Does your existence depend on you seeing a tree? Does your existence depend on you smelling a rose? Does your existence depend on you tasting a nice food? No? Hearing a nice music? Not at all. Our existence does not depend on the sense organs and the perceptions of the field. Okay, we do not depend, and we know that. Okay, we know that we exist before, during, and after all and every experience appears and disappears within the screen of our conscious awareness. Okay? So every time we see something, are you there, Steve? You there? Okay, and now you see that appeared a glass. Why? Were you there before the glass?
Yes.
Do you depend on the glass for your existence right now? No. So
No.
you were there before, and then you saw the glass appear, okay? And now the glass is going to disappear. So did you lose your existence? Of course not. And
No.
the same with any thought, the same with any object that appears in the screen of our consciousness. We are there always before, during, and after. There is no conflict between consciousness and the object. The most absurd thing, but you may be surprised or not surprised, but there are some spiritual circles that believe that consciousness comes into existence only with the object. The object produces consciousness. You understand? People go to the extreme of putting together, of creating these structures of thoughts around this concept, which is a materialist concept. Okay, the consciousness comes out of matter, objects, okay, or energy, and then consciousness. No, we know that we existed before, and no object is going to prove our existence. Nothing. We are there before, during, and after. Every object comes and goes. This means that the appearance of an object does not bring us into existence. The disappearance of an object does not render myself non-existent. Since this is the case, how does the disappearance of all objects in sleep, deep sleep, prove that you are non-existent? I'm going to repeat. Since this is the case in the waking state, how does the disappearance of all objects in deep sleep prove my non-existence if my existence is there before the appearance of the physical material object? My existence is there before the appearance of the mental objects of the dream state, and then my conscious existence is there before the appearance of absence of subtle and physical material objects. Okay? This means that the appearance of an object does not bring you into existence, and its disappearance does not render you non-existent. Since this is the case, how does the disappearance of all objects in deep sleep prove that you are non-existent? Nonsense. We need to really look into those experiences to understand that we don't run out of existence during the deep sleep, and that's going to take us a further step into a more profound and more freeing understanding. If this does not remove your doubt, remember that the word existence, Satchitananda, existence, Satya is synonymous with consciousness. Existence is synonymous with consciousness, which is of the nature of limitless, infinite, limitless consciousness. So it's Sat, Chit, Ananda. So in Sat and Chit, consciousness and existence, they are synonymous. They are the nature of the self. When we say Sat, Chit, Ananda, people may think that, oh, these are qualities of the self. These are properties of the self. No, it's not. The self is free of qualities. The self is not a fact or colored by the three qualities, by the three gunas. Okay, it's nirguna, it's free from the gunas. It's attributeless. Okay? And then what is this business of Satchitananda? It's not an attribute, it's the nature of the self. The nature is that without which the thing is not a thing. The self is of the nature of existence. Everything in existence exists because self's existence. And it's of the nature of consciousness, which, by the way, its existence, consciousness, is limitless. There is one without any other factor, therefore it has no borders. Okay? It's all over. It's pervading the entire universe, and it just exists beyond the confines of the universe in all directions, infinitely and eternally, beyond time, space, and all over. So why we're saying that? It's Satya, Sat-Chit. They are synonymous. Okay, consciousness and existence are synonymous. Consciousness and consciousness exist independently of objects. Okay? Existence is synonymous of consciousness, and we know that consciousness exists independently of objects because consciousness is the subject principle that reveals the object. There are two factors playing in the universe: the conscious subject principle and the objects revealed and known by it. Okay? So consciousness being synonymous of existence, we know that consciousness does not depend on the object. The consciousness is that which reveals the object. It not only it projects by the power of its Maya, projects the world of objects, but it reveals, experience, and knows the object. We know that consciousness does not depend on any object, therefore existence being synonymous of consciousness does not depend on any object either. This is self-evident. But all we have to do is to look at our experience for confirmation. Objects come, they go, they change, they go, but consciousness is always here. And instead of consciousness depending on the objects to exist, objects depend on consciousness. The objects, they depend on consciousness so that they can exist, they can be revealed, they can be known. You cannot have an object without consciousness, the subject conscious principle. However, in a state like deep sleep, you can have consciousness without objects. Okay? You cannot have objects without consciousness. We cannot have objects without consciousness. However, in the state like deep sleep, you can have consciousness without objects. Okay? So the bottom line is the objects depend on consciousness existing for their existence. And in the state of deep sleep, we have consciousness existence appearing, not revealing any discrete object. There is nothing really happening. There is a very subtle object, as I mentioned at the beginning, which is the absence of tangible objects. So consciousness exists with and without objects. Now you might say, wait a minute, I don't see how I am conscious in deep sleep. How I am conscious in deep sleep because, how can I be conscious if I'm not conscious of something? How can I be conscious if I cannot really experience and know something? No? If you exist in deep sleep, which you do, and we have already determined that, if you exist in deep sleep, which we already have determined, then you are conscious because consciousness and existence are synonymous. That's when we have to bring this knowledge, okay, revealed especially beautifully, brilliantly in the Panchadas, which equates consciousness and existence, okay? If I exist during the deep sleeping, in which there are total absence of objects, it means that I'm conscious during deep sleep because I am Sat-Chit and I'm the nature of limitlessness. But it may not seem like you are existing in deep sleep because you are not conscious of anything. You're not conscious of anything, even though we have already determined that consciousness does not depend on the perception of objects. We already determined that, but it feels like that I'm not conscious because I'm not conscious of any object. Okay, so let's analyze this situation a little bit further from this angle of consciousness. I am conscious, I have the term that I exist. The scriptures, they declare that consciousness and existence are the same. The two natures of the self, the same way the two natures of the fire is light and heat. The same way, likewise, the two natures of the self is consciousness and existence. Let's look into that a little further from this angle of consciousness. Earlier, it was mentioned that sleep is an experience. But what kind of experience is this experience of deep sleep? It's the experience of absence of objects. Because how can you say that there are no objects in deep sleep if you are not there to experience the absence of objects? No? So how can we experience absence and this? There was nothing going on unless there is an experience. There is the experiencer. There is a conscious experience of absence of object. It is the experience of the absence of objects, because how can you say that there are no objects in the deep sleep if you are not there to experience the absence of the object? So the same experience, like we go into a meeting and then there is nobody there, but is the hall really empty? No. I should never discount my conscious existence and say there was nothing happening in the hall. There was nothing present. There was nobody present. So we should never discount the subject, the one that is making this statement. Okay? So the moment that we say there is no object in deep sleep, it implies that there is an experiencing entity experiencing the absence of tangible, subtle, and physical objects. For instance, if someone asks you, was the President of the United States at your house yesterday? Somebody asks Steve, so the President, the famous Mr. Trump, the good friend of Ramji. So, was the President, Mr. Trump, at your house yesterday, Steve? You will probably say, no. So how is that possible? How can you say that the President of the United States was not in your house? Because you were there. If you were not there at your house, you could not say that you have experienced the absence of Mr. Trump. We can only say, I have experienced the absence of Mr. Trump because I am present. Okay? Or let's suppose that you come to a webinar class and find that there is nobody else in the meeting, like happened with me last week. How can that be possible? It's only possible because I was there alone in the meeting to experience the absence of all other participants. Okay? So we must be there in order to experience and know the presence, and we must be there to experience and know the absence of objects. And we must be there. Objects cannot be there without the subject. It is the same thing in deep sleep. For you to say that there were no objects present, you had to be present to know that there was an experience of their absence. And since there is an experience of their absence in deep sleep, there is consciousness, because you cannot have experience of no object without consciousness. Experience depends on consciousness. Without the presence of any limiting objects. Deep sleep is the experience of limitless, without the presence of any limiting objects. Deep sleep is an experience of limitlessness or bliss. This bliss is resultant of no otherness, of no subject duality, which is the most fundamental, primordial duality there is, subject, object. Although the same time we say there is a certain dualistic experience between the experience entity called prana and the object called absence of object. But this absence of object has a feel of limitlessness because there is no object constrained consciousness. Consciousness is free from the constraint of object. Apparent limit by these objects or colored by these objects or entangled or attached or desiring to gain or desiring to avoid, and all the complexity of this apparent duality between the subject and the object. Okay, it's true that the normal instrument of experience, the body-mind, the physical and the subtle body, the instrument by which we experience the physical material universe and the mental emotional world, the world of thoughts, feelings, and emotions. It's true that these instruments of experience is not there in deep sleep. It's not there in deep sleep, it's true. But there is a very, very subtle thought present called Nidra Vritti or Vidya Vritti. And this thought requires and registers the experience. This thought is the body or the vehicle or the means, the instrument by which we can experience the absence of object. This I thought, this prana I thought, is the one fundamentally experiencing and registering the absence of object. And since a thought is fundamentally unconscious, every thought, all thoughts, the I thought of the awakened state is unconscious. Who is lending consciousness to the I thought? The jiva thought, yeah? The vishwa thought, the awakened entity who gets identified with the physical body, the subtle body. Who is really lending consciousness to the I thought of the awaker? It's consciousness itself. So the I thought of the awaker is unconscious. The I thought of the dreamer is unconscious. And the I thought of the prana, the deep sleeper, is unconscious. This means that the conscious self, the real you, has to be there making experience possible, including the experience of no object. Okay? So the prana, this very, very subtle vritti, called Nidra Vritti or Vidya Vritti, okay? Called also the prana jiva. It is an unconscious instrument by which we experience the dream world, okay? And this I thought is as unconscious as the other I thoughts. It means to say that you, the fourth factor, we have three factors, and the fourth factor sometimes referred as Turiya. But let's not get confused and think that Turiya is a fourth state of consciousness. Turiya is the fourth principle, this fourth element, the fourth factor, okay, which lends conscious existence to these three different vehicles of experience, entities, so that they can experience and know they are conscious by the grace of consciousness alone. The real you has to be there making knowledge and experience possible through these three states of consciousness. I don't know if it was a bit of too much. If you guys have any question, there is a nice wrap up, but it's a bit long to wrap up the conclusion that the self is present and unchanging through every one of these states. Or maybe we should stop here, not to overload ourselves so that we don't end up getting an overdose of Vedanta. And maybe we could open for a little bit of a chat. Contributions?
I was always
Logic.
Yes.
I think it's always good for me to
Body and mind.
One at a time. Let Carla speak first, Stephen.
I just sometimes have this space in me that wasn't able to really grasp the state of sleep. I understand it from a consciousness perspective, but it's always good to revisit it because I always like to see that I'm present there, but the mind still thinks it should be there. So it's a good one to take apart and look at again.
These teachings.
It's good.
Yeah, it is very, very important to revisit those teachings and get reestablished in this knowledge, you know. It's not that I am this force factor and I'm always present.
Yeah.
The difference between the three experiencing entities, the three jivas, and I myself as consciousness. And,
I was in bed the other day after I'd been reading some Vedanta, and I had the thought that I am awareness. And then it was even good to see that I thought wasn't real. That there is nobody that needs to be identifying with consciousness even.
Yeah.
It was just a new little flip for me to even minimize the amount of effort I had been making to be something I already am.
Yeah.
It was quite
Very subtle, yeah.
very subtle but lovely.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, I mean, we make an effort to identify as consciousness until the effort is no longer necessary, because when it's clearly seen, you know, in the moment that you have this clarity, you know, the certainty about you, the self and self-obvious consciousness shine, you know, through the mind and all these states of experience. And then once you have it clear, and then there is no question of making any effort, because, you know, I mean, I'm always this. But for as long as a video tricks us to believe the self is not shining and I need to make an effort to gain the self, or to be the self, or to be established as the self, and then we need to make an effort. And our effort as Vedantins is jnana yoga, you know.
Well, I'll be very clear. That was in a very clear sattvic moment. But certainly with Vidya and my day-to-day life, which was explained by Mark in terms of, you know, there's Rajasic, and, you know, my life is a householder for sure. But what I find is there's increasing frequency with regards to not identifying. And that only comes with knowledge. I understand that. So
that's nice.
Lovely to visit it as a group. It's good.
Very good. Very nice, Colin. You're going to say something, Stephen?
I think it was Mark, actually.
Mark?
No, that was me. Okay. Yeah. How does Vedanta, if the body and mind is absent, deep sleep, how come it's the mind which only wake up?
I'm sorry, your signal seems to be a little weak and it's cutting. Can you repeat again, slowly?
Okay, yeah. How I kind of understand the answer in my head, but how does Vedanta explain if the body, how come it's the body and mind which is rested in the morning?
Again,
which is refreshed.
Again, it cut the first part of the question. Again, I'm putting the pieces together as you repeat it.
Okay. How does Vedanta explain? If the body and mind is absent in deep sleep,
yeah,
how come it's the same body and mind who are refreshed in the morning?
Right. Yeah, we have gone through.
The body and mind's not.
Yeah, that's a good question, because the waker, we know that it was off. It was out of job. Yeah, the physical body was off, the subtle body was off. So who was there to register the fact that I'm having a good time and I'm enjoying? Because the waker later on, in retrospect, and by inference, it understands that, wow, there was something very nice here in between, because I feel so great, I feel so fresh, and so the waker has in retrospect, by inference, gains the knowledge, and the inferential knowledge is a very valid means of knowledge. It's very important. So this is one aspect to look at this understanding. By inference, you know that you cause and effect. Something happened. I was very, very tired last night at 11. I was feeling really bad. And then in the morning, I felt great and fresh and so on. And by inference, I know that there was a very nice something happened during the night that refreshed my body, my energy, my batteries, or whatever. Okay, so this is the waker makes that inference. But there is also another entity there, another vrit, another I thought, which is the prana, that is capturing, although it's not a conscious thought, but there is a very, very subtle vrit that is experiencing the absence of duality, the absence of the subject-object duality. So the prana jiva is almost like consciousness experience itself. Okay, that's why when we look into this teach, sometimes we talk as a deep sleep, as consciousness experience its fullness, and sometimes we talk it's the prana experience the fullness of non-duality, of no objects rather than the subject. But this is yet an entity. It borrows its conscious existence from consciousness in order to experience this field, this world called the dream world. Okay, so there is this, the last sentence here says like, it means that the conscious self, the real world, has to be there. No, there is another one. But there is a very subtle thought present called the nidra vritti or vidya vritti that experience and register the experience of absence of object. There is a vritti, there is a thought, but it's very subtle. It's almost like unconscious, but it's there, capturing that experience. But it's not conscious enough to be recollected by itself in the experience itself. You understand? We are talking about the causal body. It's subconscious or unconscious. So the conscious mind occurs in the subtle body. That's where our self-consciousness comes, and we say, oh, I am, I know that I am, I experience, I know that experience, and so on. And then I can go about learning and growing and connecting the dots. So there is this rich, and there is the visual, the waker that in retrospect, by inference, can understand that, wow, I dreamt, and I even have some memories. And somehow the memory is captured. It leaks from one state to another. One of the most intriguing things to me is how those memories that should be retained by the taijasa, the dreamer, how those memories, they leak to the awaker, because in the morning the awaker still holds some of those. It fades quickly, but sometimes we just hold, It's almost as if the awaker just goes there and pulls and retains some of those fleeting experience, those subtle memories, you know. So the most important lesson or learning or knowledge to be gained here is that consciousness is present through all these three states as determined by this logical analysis. Okay, and I exist during deep sleep, and since I exist, I am conscious during and over deep sleep. I exist during and over the dream state, through my dream world as the dreamer and the dream, and I exist in the awakening state as the awaker and experience the world, the physical material world, and the world of thoughts and emotion. So the most fundamental learning or question or knowledge to understand, to gain, is that I am this principle, this three factor, the fourth factor that's always present, yeah, lending existence and consciousness to these three entities. So that's what there is to it. And we're going to look into that. We're going to wrap it up next week. By the way, shall we have another class next week? There is anybody interested or available?
I know that I'm not around.
Yeah, you told me before.
Yeah.
Anyhow, doesn't matter. I will send an email around Thursday, and then we find out, and then we decide if we do it or if we don't do it. All right?
Good, Orlando.
Okie dokie.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ishwara.
Touch. Much love.
Bye.
Bye bye.